Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 58th Annual Australia-Japan Joint Business Conference. Before we start, I'd like to draw your attention to the interpretation service. If you need an interpreter, please click on the orange headphones to the right of your screen and choose the correct language.
Before we start, I'd like to draw your attention to the interpretation service. If you need an interpreter, please click on the orange headphones to the right of your screen and choose the correct language.
My name is Richard Andrews, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the AJBCC. You'll see me throughout the day as I guide you through what I expect to be a very interesting and thought-provoking series of discussions. I'm speaking to you from Canberra, on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the First Nations custodians of those lands and of all the lands on which our participants are located today, to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to welcome in particular any Strait Islander people among us today. I wish also in particular to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Akio Mimura, Chairman of the JABCC, and Sir Rod Eddington, AO, our own President, and members of the JABCC and AJBCC executive committees. We're also honoured to be joined in person by His Excellency Shingo Yamagami, the Ambassador of Japan to Australia, who will speak shortly, and Her Excellency Jan Adams, the Australian Ambassador to Japan. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome our colleagues in Japan who have been able to join a restricted gathering in the Hotel New Otani in Tokyo, and to thank the JABCC for having organised this, and we wish that we were all able to gather together in person today. A quick word about today's programme. As you know, the theme of the conference is Collective Efforts for Turbulent Times, and it's set against the background of the 3 Cs, the coronavirus pandemic, carbon neutrality, and China, that are reshaping the regional and global business environment. Each session is designed to help us explore these themes, and we have a lineup of very distinguished speakers. Because the conference is online, we've tried to keep it short, but we have big issues to talk about, so the time is tightly packed. We will therefore be keeping introductions very short. If you want to know more about our speakers, please take advantage of the additional information that you can access through the online platform in each session. There are also a number of additional resources in the exhibition hall where some of our sponsors have stands, and I encourage you to visit them. With the packed schedule that we have, it will be very important that we keep the sessions on time. So I would ask that, particularly where you have questions, these be kept as brief and concise as possible, and you ask your questions by using the portable device that's located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I'd also like to make it clear that while there are media present, the conference is being held under the Chatham House rule, which means that the substance of the conference may be reported, but comments should not be attributed to individuals without their permission. The exception to this is this opening session, which is fully on the record. Finally, I wish to thank and acknowledge the strong support of our great sponsors in alphabetical order: AMP, BHP, Fujitsu Australia, PwC Australia, Rio Tinto, Visy, and Woodside, as well as our key partner, the South Australian Government. Without your support, we would not have been able to run this event, so we offer our heartfelt thanks. And I now call upon the President of the AJBCC, Sir Rod Eddington, to make some brief introductory remarks. Sir Rod.
Thanks, Richard. Welcome everybody to this, the 58th Joint Conference. When we met exactly 2 years ago in the New Otani Hotel in Osaka, I don't think any of us could have foreseen what lay ahead. Sadly, we had to cancel last year's conference, and I'm delighted that we're able to go ahead this year with the full support of all our members, albeit that we're operating virtually. Let's hope that next year we'll be able to meet in person in Japan. Our businesses and our nations have been challenged over the last 2 years in ways in which we could never have predicted. We've had to cope with a global pandemic, on a scale that was really unimaginable. The interesting thing for me is the way in which our many businesses and companies have worked so hard to adjust and adapt so that they're able to keep going, often at considerable expense to themselves, their staff, and their customers. So well done, everybody, for staying the course. As we look at the issues that sit in front of us as we come out of the pandemic, issues like accelerating digitization and working hard to guarantee our supply chains. These are all things that the pandemic have brought a focus on. We've seen disruption to supply chains of everything from air and sea freight to the availability of silicon chips and other technologies. And we've also seen that without digitization and the ability to operate remotely, we simply couldn't have kept going. And both these key themes are part of our conference today, and I think speak to relevance, as does the focus on the decarbonisation of our communities and our economies, particular focus today on the important role that hydrogen and ammonia will play on that. And we've already had an excellent start in that regard this morning with a working breakfast, as we did with the focus on infrastructure, something that's really important to both of us and a key theme of this conference for many years. Let me add my thanks to Richard, to our two ambassadors, Ambassador Yamagami in Canberra and Ambassador Adams in Tokyo. Both are really important. Let me also add my thanks to Richard's, to our sponsors, and particularly to Premier Stephen Marshall in South Australia and Adelaide, who's been a great supporter of us coming to Adelaide. Premier, I'm sorry we can't be there in person. I'm delighted that you've stuck with us, and thank you again for your support through this. So it's been a very interesting 2 years. We all hope that the next 12 months will see some light at the end of the tunnel. Importantly, that we'll be able to visit one another here in Australia to Japan and reciprocated from Japan to Australia. We know that people-to-people links are the very backbone of our business-to-business relationships. And we really hope that we'll be able to do it again. And to Dr. Mimura, as chairman of the JABCC and his team in Japan, thank you for all the work you've done to make this happen. As I say to Richard Adams and the team here, I really look forward to an interesting and informative conference today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Rod. I would now like to warmly welcome and invite the chairman of the JABCC, Dr. Akio Mimura, to provide his introductory remarks. Dr. Mimura.
Sir Rod Eddington, President of AJBCC, the Honourable Scott Morrison, MP and Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Tehan, Minister of Trade, Tourism and Investment Australia, the Honourable Steve Marshall, Premier of South Australia. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to say a few words on behalf of the JABCC. Firstly, I would like to pay tribute and thank Sir Rod and the Australian side for the strong leadership in organizing this conference. Thank you very much. When we decided to postpone last year, I promised Sir Rod that we would hold the 58th conference in whatever form it might take. And it is with great emotion that we are all here today. I am extremely pleased to see Sir Rod and the other members of the Australia-Japan Business Cooperation Committee. I would also like to thank the Prime Minister Morrison and Minister Tehan for Trade, Tourism and Investment for taking time out of their busy schedules to give us their addresses today. We had also arranged for Prime Minister Suga and METI Minister Kajiwara to address this meeting. Unfortunately, due to the recent political situation, as you know, they were not able to attend. This year, the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games were held in Tokyo.
Although we had to hold the games without spectators due to the spread of COVID-19, we were able to welcome many athletes from Australia. I am confident that as the host country, we have been able to leave a legacy for the next generation. We are also delighted to hear that the Olympic and Paralympic Games will be held in Brisbane, Australia in 2032. We are looking forward to working with you to build up momentum in the run-up towards your games. Many challenges are besetting us today, including the need to address the global spread of COVID-19, the need to become carbon neutral in order to decarbonize, and the need to diversify and strengthen global supply chains for economic security in the context of the protracted conflict between the US and China. Many of these issues have come to the fore. The Australia-Japan Partnership on Decarbonization through Technology was announced in June 2021. At the recent Australia-Japan Summit held in conjunction with the Quad, our leaders agreed to strengthen our economic partnership with a focus on complementing each other to diversify and strengthen our supply chains. The importance of public-private collaboration was also confirmed. Never before has there been greater momentum in Japan to place a greater emphasis on the Australia-Japan relationship as a special strategic partner in a variety of political, economic, and security matters. It is no exaggeration to say that the Australia-Japan relationship, which our two committees have worked so hard to build over the past 58 years, was all for this moment. The CPTPP, in which Australia and Japan have played a major role, is attracting many more countries and regions today. I believe it is important that the high standards of the CPTPP are upheld in the review of new accessions in order to promote rules-based free trade. I believe it is timely that our hosts, the AJBCC, have chosen the main theme of the conference to be collective efforts in turbulent times, with the sub-theme of the business environment have been buffeted by the 3 Cs. In conclusion, I would like to thank all those who have contributed in the preparations of this conference. And I hope that this joint conference, with your cooperation, will lead to a further uplifting the Australia-Japan relations to a new level going forward. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mimura. We are now privileged to have a brief message, specially recorded for this event, by the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison MP.
I'm delighted to be with you for this very important conference and to be with our many Japanese friends and partners. Right around the world these past couple of years, they've been tough as we've faced a global health and economic crisis, a pandemic and a recession. And in the midst of it, Japan has done something truly extraordinary. Japan persevered and put on what were an extraordinary Olympic and Paralympic Games in Tokyo. And in doing so, you reminded the world that we all face setbacks, sure, but when you do, you adapt, you keep going, you persevere, and you overcome. So I want to pay tribute once again to all the people of Japan and all of those involved who put on such an extraordinary Olympic and Paralympic Games. Our countries have had a deep and abiding friendship that we built together. Our friendship is an achievement. It speaks to the best of our peoples. And it came from a shared realisation that prosperity and security is found in partnership. It is always founded on respect, and it grows through trust, supported by shared values and shared beliefs. And so I'm delighted to be part of this annual conference that celebrates the business and ties between our two countries. Your joint committees were founded almost 60 years ago. While governments were considering ways and means to diversify the markets, business, as it always does, was just getting on with it, getting down to business through committees just like yours. This has been built on a foundation of trust and shared benefit. As your president, Sir Rod Eddington, puts it, in business, standing still is not an option. Today, the ties of trade and diplomacy and friendship and trust between Australia and Japan are strong and they are enduring. But once again, we find ourselves in a world that is changing dramatically, absolutely dramatically. And there lies the truth of your theme, collective efforts in turbulent times. Under that banner, we can look to the relationship between Australia and Japan and have confidence and optimism. There is no part of the world that is more dynamic than the Indo-Pacific at this time. It's a region of extraordinary opportunity and great potential, to be sure. But there are also many challenges, many risks that must be mitigated and overcome. Australia's special strategic partnership with Japan, our closest partnership in Asia, is critical to how we are approaching these challenges. Together, we're cooperating on our response to the health and economic impacts of COVID-19, particularly in the Quad partnership, which we share with the United States and India, and where we can celebrate the fact that the Quad's rollout of 1.2 billion doses of vaccines into the Indo-Pacific is what we're achieving together. This is our duty as global citizens living in the Indo-Pacific region, demonstrating how liberal democracies can get the job done. And it makes strong economic sense as well, as the only way to reopen markets to trade, tourism and travel is through these vaccinations right across the region. On climate change, Japan and Australia are pursuing net zero emissions. We're working closely on the technology and innovation that will get us there because we know that's the answer. As a reliable provider of resources, energy and agricultural products today, and as we transition to new energy sources such as hydrogen, that is where our future is together. In June, Australia and Japan agreed to a decarbonisation partnership, agreeing to collaborate on our shared goal of decarbonisation through low emissions technology. So can I give a shout out to the delegates from both countries, business and investors who are involved in hydrogen infrastructure and the supply chains that support them. You've got exciting times ahead of you for all of us, and two tremendously supportive governments behind you as you seek to realise these objectives. We're moving in response to regional dynamics and global imperatives. Together, Australia and Japan are stronger than ever. For that, I want to acknowledge my dear friend and colleague, the former Prime Minister Suga, and thank you for our wonderful friendship, and I want to thank you for your great leadership, enhancing the depth of our relationship that carries across leaders. And so I now look forward to working with Fumio Kishida, someone of great experience within the region. And when he is sworn in to become Japan's next Prime Minister, there is much work for he and I to continue. As a long-standing friend of Australia, he understands the challenge that we face and understands the partnership that I know we will be able to successfully steward together. So I look forward to working together on our efforts towards peace and security and prosperity in our region. We know that everybody gains from a stable Indo-Pacific. We know we all benefit, and that includes business. Today, you're exploring opportunities of collective and cooperative action. By committing to each other, the possibilities, they're endless. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to strengthen our partnership, and thank you for your attention today.
Thank you. And on behalf of all of us, I wish to thank the Prime Minister for taking the time to produce this message. As you all know, Prime Minister Morrison demonstrated a strong personal commitment to the relationship between Australia and Japan, having made it a priority to visit Japan late last year, despite having to spend 2 weeks in quarantine on his return. And since then, as he referred to, he's met several times with Prime Minister Suga, including just a few days ago in New York. And we look forward to him developing his relationship with new Prime Minister Kishida, as he mentioned. It's now my great honor to introduce His Excellency Shingo Yamagami, the Ambassador of Japan to Australia, to provide a message on behalf of the Japanese government.
Sir Eddington, Dr. Mimura, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Congratulations on holding the 58th Annual Australian-Japan Joint Business Conference. As the theme of the conference speaks for itself, both nations face significant challenges. I highly respect all who are continuing business with creativity in spite of the overwhelming impact of COVID-19. Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games were held successfully in the face of the pandemic, and athletes of both nations inspired us all with their great performances. The Olympic and Paralympic Games demonstrated clearly that both nations are sport nations. With vaccinations growing over time, we will be shifting towards living with COVID, and I look forward to resumption of travel between Japan and Australia soon, and to be able to meet face-to-face next year in this conference. The Indo-Pacific region, where we belong, is faced with increasingly severe security environment. Collaboration between Japan and Australia have deepened further as a special strategic partner with shared fundamental values and strategic interest through Prime Minister Morrison's visit to Japan November last year and the Foreign and Defense Ministers meeting, the so-called 2+2, this June. Last month, Japan, Australia, US, and India held a summit meeting face-to-face for the first time towards realizing a free and open Indo-Pacific, the Quad meeting. Close collaboration is taking place in trade towards the expansion of Japan-Australia-led TPP, as well as RCEP coming into force. Preparations will be made to pave the way for an early visit by the newly inaugurated Kishida Prime Minister to Australia. COP26 is slated to be held next month. Governments of both nations will collaborate closely based on the Partnership on Decarbonization through Technology announced in June. We are collaborating closely, including exports of hydrogen. Regarding decarbonization, Japan and Australia will not only seek bilateral cooperation, but will also take the lead in assisting developing nations in Asia. The robust foundation of Japan-Australia relationship lies in the mutual trust nurtured through years of investment and trade in the business sector above all. The aspirations of the members of the business conference in Japan and Australia. I'd like to express appreciation for your contributions to the relationship and kindly ask for your continued support. And let me conclude my remarks by wishing great success of the annual Australian-Japan Joint Business Conference and health and prosperity of all attending the meeting. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yamagami, both for your remarks just now and also for being such a forceful advocate for the Japan-Australia relationship and for being a very strong friend of Australia and of the business community. As you know, it had originally been planned that this conference would be held in Adelaide, and the AJBCC is very thankful to the South Australian government for its strong and ongoing support of this event and of the business relationship more broadly. We're honoured now to have a message from the Premier of South Australia, the Honourable Stephen Marshall MP, who will provide a brief welcoming address to get the conference proceedings underway.
おはようございます。南オーストラリア州の首相マーシャルです。 Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome you to the 58th Annual Australia-Japan Joint Business Conference. Though we are unable to meet in person, I'm so pleased that we can come together virtually in this forum. This year's conference focuses on collective efforts in turbulent times, providing insights into how we draw upon our complementary skills and attributes to achieve economic prosperity and regional stability. The South Australian Government deeply values our long-standing partnership and friendship with Japan. In March 2019, we further strengthened that relationship with the opening of our Northeast Asia Trade and Investment Office in Tokyo. It's elevating the opportunities to do business between our regions and is successfully placing many South Australian premium products onto supermarket shelves in Japan and restaurants within Tokyo and Osaka. Our sister state relationship with Okayama, formed in 1993, is very strong, and we have several Japanese companies from that region now active here in South Australia. At the same time, we've been working with Japanese companies to advance our leadership in reducing emissions. South Australia is blessed with world-class wind and solar resources, complemented by significant land availability and a deep water port facility. We believe hydrogen exports from our state will support Japan to reach its 2030 emissions target, a win for both regions and the world and our ongoing sustainability. We've already seen Mitsubishi Heavy Industries invest in a South Australian company, H2U, to jointly develop green hydrogen and ammonia projects using renewable power sources from right here in South Australia. ENEOS Corporation recently signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Neoen Australia to jointly examine the potential for the stable supply of affordable hydrogen produced from renewable energy in South Australia. Our collaborative approach extends to other sectors, including space. Our capital city, Adelaide, is not only Australia's most livable city and the third most livable city in the world, it is also home to the Australian Space Agency headquarters. Together with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, we've signed a Memorandum of Understanding that will increase space collaboration between our nations. In December last year, the Hayabusa 2 capsule landed in South Australia, and I personally look forward to working more closely with JAXA and Japanese aerospace companies on further space collaboration. South Australia has a long association with welcoming students from Japan to our state, and our universities and institutions regularly partner with Japan. Earlier this year, an agreement was signed between the University of Adelaide and Shujitsu University in Okayama to enable Japanese pharmacy students to study in South Australia, and I hope to be able to welcome them to our state very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, our continued partnership, friendship and business ties have created a strong and deep relationship between South Australia and Japan. I have no doubt the discussions as part of today's conference will be fruitful for both Australia and Japan, and that we will continue to build upon all that we have already achieved together. I hope to see you all in South Australia in person when travel restrictions allow. Adelaide de omachi shite orimasu. Arigato.
Thank you very much, Premier. And again, let me reiterate our thanks to the Government of South Australia for their strong support for this event. And we certainly hope that it'll be possible for us to do something in Adelaide in the very near future with them. To round out this opening session now, we have a keynote address from the Australian Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, the Honourable Dan Tehan MP, setting out his views on the future of the Australia-Japan business relationship. Like the Prime Minister, Minister Tehan has also demonstrated his commitment to this relationship by making a recent visit to Japan, again, despite the requirement to quarantine on his return, and he very much valued his opportunity to meet with Dr. Mimura and the JABCC executive at that time, and he provided an excellent briefing to the AJBCC on his return to Australia. As many of you will know, the Minister is currently travelling on official business in Europe, where he has a very packed schedule. So we're very grateful that immediately before he departed, he took the time to record this keynote address for the conference.
Thank you for the kind invitation to speak with you. Can I acknowledge Dr. Akio Mimura AC and Sir Rod Eddington AO for the AJBCC and JABCC's tireless work in fostering closer business relationships between our two great nations. The Australia-Japan Trade and Investment Partnership is stronger than ever, but we cannot stand still. Our Indo-Pacific region is facing significant challenges from COVID-19 to geopolitical competition, digital innovation and disruption, global supply chain challenges, and climate change. But as every astute business person knows, each challenge brings opportunity. And Japanese and Australian businesses can meet these challenges and opportunities together. The long-established relationship of trust and shared values between our two countries gives me confidence that we have the right partnership for this endeavour. The conference themes, COVID-19, China and carbon neutrality, are timely and well-chosen themes that I'm sure will stimulate important discussions. The Australia-Japan Partnership stands us in good stead as we address challenges in our region and grasp the many opportunities on offer. Japan is a critical partner for Australia in pursuing our shared commitment to an open, inclusive and resilient Indo-Pacific region. Across the region, pressures to modernise energy and accelerate the switch away from fossil fuels towards renewables and a range of low emissions technologies are gathering pace. Australia welcomes the strong interest from Japanese investors in clean energy. The Japan-Australia Partnership on Decarbonisation through Technology that Prime Minister Morrison and former Prime Minister Suga announced in the margins of the G7 meeting in June is a signal of our determination to work together. Australia wants to be Japan's hydrogen partner of choice. This is something I am personally very focused on, and we have made important steps in establishing a hydrogen supply chain with Japan. In July this year, I was privileged to visit the HEX liquefied hydrogen terminal in Kobe, where I toured the site and saw the world's first liquefied hydrogen carrier, the CISO Frontier. Australia is also well placed to be a reliable supplier for Japan's critical mineral needs, including in low emissions technology supply chains. With our resources of critical minerals and pipeline of highly prospective projects, Australia can continue to help Japan diversify and secure its critical mineral supplies, continuing the decade-long rare earths cooperation already in train. We are also cooperating on digital trade. Australia and Japan both believe digitalisation is vital to economic recovery and future growth, and that a regional digital trade initiative would help ensure that our region can take advantage of the growing global digital economy. COVID-19 has taken a terrible toll on lives, livelihoods and our communities. But amid this challenge, Japan successfully hosted the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics, which gave the world so much joy and hope. Australians, myself included, were enthralled by the competition, and it was the inspiration we all needed at such a difficult time. It showed us that we can find ways to adapt and live with this virus. And learning to live with this virus is key. That is why National Cabinet has agreed to the National Plan. It is our roadmap out of this pandemic and will see us open up at key vaccination milestones. At 80% vaccination rates, we will lift restrictions on outbound travel and establish travel bubbles with other nations. My hope is Japan can be one of the first nations we can establish a bubble with. We face significant geostrategic and trade challenges. Australia remains concerned about the significant increase in disruptive and restrictive measures implemented by China on a wide range of Australian exports. China has consistently spoken about its commitment to open trade and the multilateral trading system, including through their recent request to accede to the CPTPP. We have conveyed to China our expectation that WTO members and CPTPP aspirant economies should conduct trade in accordance with established rules. We remain ready to discuss our concerns with China at any time to seek to resolve them. We know Australia is not the only country that has concerns about geostrategic and trade challenges. A well-functioning WTO that sets clear rules and effectively resolves disputes is one tool to help address disruptive trade actions. It's clear the multilateral trading system is facing significant pressure from shifts in the global trade investment environment. And it is important that the WTO plays a key role in providing the rulebook and being the independent umpire for international trade. That's why we are working with like-minded countries in forums like the WTO to respond to China's actions and support the open, rules-based multilateral trading system. The WTO's upcoming 12th Ministerial Conference is an important opportunity to progress much-needed reform. We must press for a positive agenda and credible package of initiatives for MC12 and beyond. Australia is offering its leadership, negotiating energy and flexibility to secure such a result. And we deeply appreciate Japan's leadership in sustaining and advancing the rules-based global trading system. Friends, my final message is this. We have much to be optimistic about for the future of our trade and investment partnership. Business and government must work together to seize the opportunities as we emerge from the pandemic to grow and further strengthen our economies and the Indo-Pacific. That is why gatherings like this are so important. I again thank the AJBCC and JABCC for your huge contribution to the relationship and wish you well in your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And again, I'd like to thank Minister Tehan in particular, not just for his remarks today, but for his strong support for the relationship between Australia and Japan. We now move to the first short break. The next session is called Maintaining Energy in Australia-Japan Relations, and it will cover the implications for our trading relationship of the growing imperative to go carbon neutral, highlighted by Japan's pledge to do so by 2050 and by the ongoing debate that's happening here in Australia. It will commence promptly at 11:50 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. That's 9:50 a.m. in Tokyo and 8:50 a.m. for those of you who are in Perth and Singapore. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for the session.